Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Monday, January 6, 2024, day 1048 of the full-scale invasion. Now, it is January 6th. January 6th, of course, is a date that, in my mind, will live in infamy. It was 4 years ago today that we saw the attempt to overturn the free and fair elections in the United States by Donald Trump and his supporters. That's what it was, right? It was an open insurrection. And we are still dealing with the fallout as the copper-toned con man prepares to release from jail all of the traitors that smashed our democracy that day. We are in trouble. There's no doubt about it. The Ukrainians are having some trouble of their own. Today is January 6th, which I would remind everybody was the first time 1 year ago today was the first time that we saw Ukrainian regular forces set foot on Russian soil. That was in Belgorod. Now, that's a year ago today, and here we are at the start of winter. Things are wet and cold, and they are not nice. God, that sounded like something Trump would say. They're not nice. They're very not nice. The weather is terrible. Blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about a couple of things on this date with weight. So on the 6th of January, right, that's 601 up there for the Europeans. They do day, month, year first. We saw 128 drones fired at the territory of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. 79 of them were shot down by Ukrainian air defense. 49 were taken out with active countermeasures of some type or description. That's a 100% interception rate on the drones. 2 missiles were also fired at the territory of Ukraine, two X-59 or KH-59s, both of which were also taken out. So 100% interception rate from the mobile defense units. Now, I just want to talk about, because we don't look at the front line very much because it doesn't move, right? So I want to start with reminding us about some of the things that have happened the last 10 days. So in the last 10 days, we have seen command and control decapitation strikes in Oriel, in Kursk, in Kherson, and in Zaporizhia, all up and down the front. The battalion level commanders, deputy chiefs of staff, battalion commanders, etc. These are the kinds of people that we're seeing taken out in these raids. On top of that, we see the Ukrainians going after fuel. Down in Grozny, we had a large gas station hit, which, because of the nature of the economy there, caused a gas shortage in the area that is ongoing even now, right, a week after the fact. Up there in Oriel, we saw an oil depot hit. And then in Lvov, we saw an ammo dump hit. So all the things you need, the fuel to drive your tanks, the bullets to shoot the enemy, those are being denied. Now, for this next map, we actually go off the map. These 2 hits up here were in Moscow on the freight trains that run the supplies to the northern frontier, right? Everything that comes to Kursk comes in from these trains from Moscow. Well, those trains are not running now. Neither are the trains in Lvov and Kursk, because that railroad station took a hit right at the time that all the reinforcements to replace the withdrawing 155th I don't know. Can you withdraw if there's nobody left? Well, anyway, the withdrawing 155th. Then you've got these two incredible stories of the first one up here in the Le Mans direction. That's the story of all robot combined arms maneuvers. Ground robots supported by air robots dropping grenades on Russians in the trenches and cleaning out those positions without a single Ukrainian life risked. Astonishing technology. And then down in the Black Sea, we saw the Magura 5 sea drone evolve from being a mere one-way attack drone to being a drone platform. A platform that can use a machine gun, use rockets, launch drones of its own for its own surveillance purposes or for attack. It's an entire combat platform, not merely a sea drone. That's the kind of innovation that I think this guy was talking about when he left the command of the armed forces. This General Zaluzhny, who today serves as ambassador to Great Britain on behalf of the Ukrainian people, a critically important political job, right? It's one of the most important you could have in that game, the diplomatic game. And if you recall, in his outgoing speech, which he got a lot of flack for, because in my opinion, he used a word that was mistranslated. He used a word that means deadlocked, but instead it got translated as stalemate. And those are not the same thing. In a stalemate, nobody can win. In a deadlock, nobody can win right now. But Zaluzhny told us what the Ukrainians needed to win. They needed an advance in technology, right? Just like World War I saw the tank come onto the field of battle, just like World War II saw the introduction of atomics, so too this war is the war of the drones. And we're seeing the Ukrainians evolve and innovate the drones in ways that the Russians simply aren't capable of, because the Russians don't like anybody with a brain. They get rid of you if you ask questions. Initiative will be punished in the Russian Federation. And this is the result that we see on the battlefield. 19th century techniques. Like they just grabbed a bunch of farmers who have never been off the farm before, handed them their first muskets, and pointed them in the direction of the battle, and said, "Go, stand tall, my son, be proud." So I am reminded of Zaluzhny's words and his caution at the time. And I look at all of this stuff and I think to myself, gosh, I mean, I don't know anything. I'm not an expert, but it sure looks like there must be a counteroffensive coming, right? But we know that that's not happening. The Ukrainians are outmanned, they're outgunned, they haven't made the technological progress that's needed to break through the lines. And so we should not expect any kind of a counteroffensive from the Ukrainians anytime soon. So now let's turn our attention to the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kursk. I'm just wondering how many people got that. Anyway, the Ukrainians are on the move. They're in Kursk. Now we're going to blow up that section of the area right there. And then before we get into what's happening today, I want to tell two stories about this area up here that I've been meaning to. So the first story happened about a month ago, 6 weeks now maybe. You had these Russian infiltration groups come into the Kursk region controlled by Ukraine, hoping to get information and reconnaissance back to the other Russians so that they could come in and successfully throw the Ukrainians out, right? Well, unfortunately for the Russians, what happened was they found themselves surrounded and they found themselves taken prisoner by the Ukrainians. Now, these two infiltration groups, they each had a radio. And so the Ukrainians, who also speak perfect Russian, got on and called up the Russians and drew a whole bunch of them in, convincing them that these Ukrainians were Russians who had taken the Ukrainian positions and everything was safe. They could come on in, boys. Well, you can imagine the results of that confrontation. And this worked for a while. This about a month ago. Several hundred Russians and North Koreans are said to have been eliminated in these attacks. And this was right before we saw armor come back to the fight in Kursk, right? Because the Ukrainians had destroyed every tank and armored personnel carrier in the region, it appeared. And for about 3-4 weeks the attacks were all happening on foot, like just unbelievable. So the radio drama was one of the ways that the Ukrainians drew in large numbers of the enemy and eliminated them. Now, something similar has been going on with the North Koreans up north ever since then. There are these two thin, hard-topped roads that come in there to Malaloknya. That's where the Russians are trying to pincer in there to cut off everybody in the north and get that town, right? They want to get in there. But the Ukrainians have the heights on both sides here. And they keep drawing the North Koreans in and then eliminating them as they come. Now, in the north, one of the things that they've actually done more than once now is the Ukrainians retreat up the lowlands here, but then disperse to the hills, and then the North Koreans follow them in, and when the North Koreans get in, the Ukrainians close the road at the far end and just eliminate everybody that's on the road. It's brutal. It's brutal. But it goes to the point that we believe now 40% of the North Koreans brought in have been taken off the battlefield at this point. All right, so those are the two stories about what's been happening up there that I wanted to tell you. Now, what's happening today? Well, you look over here, see this Bolshoi Soldatskoye? That's this town over here. And if you look, you can see this road. Well, this is the highway. This is the one good hardtop road that goes from Sudza all the way up to the capital of the oblast, Kursk. Right? The city of Kursk is at the end of that road. Now, it appears that the Ukrainians are pushing up that road. They are pushing toward Kursk. They are pushing to the northeast here, toward the city of Kursk. They have taken advantage of a Russian rotation of troops. So the 155th, well, whatever's left of it, right, was being replaced by whatever's left of the 810th Marine Corps, Naval Marines, who are in Bolshoi Soldatskoye right now. That's where the 810th is. And so the Ukrainians are once again on their way to face the 810th Marines. Now, you might have heard that name before, because twice in this war, first in Bakhmut and then in Krinky, the 810th Marine Division has been decimated. I mean, destroyed, to the point where it's had to be reconstituted twice now in this war. And it looks like it's about to be for a third time. So whatever remnants of the 810th are here, They are in the way of the invading army of Ukraine. It is headed right to them. And it is coming at them under a cloud of electronic warfare. The Russians can't communicate with each other. Their radios are jammed. None of their drones will fly. The Ukrainians, for their part, have been showing off fiber optic drones all week. Have you noticed that? Now they're advancing under a cloud of electronic warfare where none of the enemy's shit works. Now, obviously, there is a cone of silence around all of this. We're not hearing what's happening blow by blow. But this, and we shouldn't expect much, right? Should not expect much. They're certainly not going to march right up the highway to Kursk and capture the capital city of the oblast. I mean, that's not going to happen, right? What kind of a naive, optimistic moron would think that that's even a possibility? Because everybody knows the Ukrainians don't have the men, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the firepower. This whole folly will probably be eliminated before they even get up the road there to there's a little town called Berdin somewhere along this road, but it doesn't show on this map. But they're on their way to Berdin now. And from there, Bolshoi. No relation to the ballet. Now, just for shits and giggles, I threw this in here because I know you don't have enough to worry about. But there is a new novel virus breaking out in China. And the hospitals there are overwhelmed. And you can be sure it is headed this way. Because that's how the world works, right? In the hot, wet tropics of southern China, new viruses evolve. They come out of there, they get into animals and people, and then from there they go around the world. Okay, anyway. That is it for me today. I think that this counteroffensive is a very interesting, very ballsy move on the part of the Ukrainians. They are taking advantage of a dip in Russian forces. That dip, because they've destroyed 38,000 of the 60,000 troops sent in there, now the Russians are having to pull from the front line in Ukraine. We know that 134th elements of the 134th Motorized Rifle Regiment are in Kursk now. What's left of them after the train that they were getting off in Lvov got hit with a bunch of HIMARS. And that was the second group to be interdicted on its way to Kursk. The Ukrainians have been watching those logistic points and watching for troop concentrations, and have also hit other elements that are being transferred from the front line to Kursk. Okay, so it looks like Ukraine's on the move despite every analyst, everybody in the world saying that there's no way that they could launch an offensive. They have launched an offensive. They are launching an offensive. It is dangerous and difficult, and we will see where it goes. Thanks, everybody.